The night I texted the wrong number, 3 black SUVs rolled onto my street like the city itself had sent a warning. It started at 2:13 in the morning, with rain ticking against my apartment window and my phone lighting up so often it felt less like a device and more like a heartbeat I couldn't shut off. I was sitting on the kitchen floor in an oversized sweatshirt, back pressed against the lower cabinets, knees pulled to my chest, trying to make my breathing quiet enough that I could hear what was happening outside. Maple Street was usually asleep by midnight. Old brick houses, narrow driveways, a flickering street lamp on the corner that the city kept promising to fix. The kind of place where people complained about barking dogs and recycling bins, not men standing beneath your window in the rain. But Ryan was down there. I knew it before I looked. My ex had a way of making the air feel crowded, even from 30 feet away. My phone buzzed again. "Come downstairs, Emily. We need to talk." I stared at the message until the letters blurred. We had already talked. We had talked in parking lots, in my doorway, outside the diner where I worked double shifts, in every place where I had tried to end something he refused to let end. I had changed my locks 2 weeks ago. Changed my schedule. Stopped answering unknown numbers. But somehow, he still found the gaps in my life. Another buzz. "I can see your light on." My fingers went cold. I looked toward the window, where the yellow kitchen light reflected my own pale face back at me. 24 years old, hair pulled into a messy knot, eyes red from exhaustion, trying to look braver than I felt. I crawled across the floor and reached up just high enough to slap the switch down. Darkness dropped over the apartment. For 1 second, I felt safer. Then my phone rang. His name filled the screen. Ryan Miller. I let it ring until it stopped. Then he called again. And again. The sound crawled under my skin. I grabbed the phone and opened my messages, meaning to text Jenna, my best friend, the only person who would answer at this hour without making me feel stupid for being scared. My hands were shaking so badly I barely checked the contact. I typed fast, every word coming out of panic. "He's outside. I'm scared. Please don't call. Just text me what to do." I hit send. The screen dimmed. The rain kept tapping. Somewhere below, a car door closed softly. I waited for Jenna's reply, staring at those 3 little dots that never came. Instead, after exactly 1 minute, a message appeared from a number with no name. "Turn off the lights. Now." My stomach tightened. I looked at the dark kitchen, then back at the screen. "They're already off," I typed. "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. "Lock your door. Don't look outside." Every sound in the apartment sharpened. The refrigerator hum. The rain. My own breath. I should have called 911. I know that now. I should have done a dozen normal things normal people do when they are afraid. But fear does not make you normal. Fear makes you listen to the voice that sounds certain. So I stood, barefoot on the cold tile, and checked the deadbolt with both hands. It was locked. The chain was on. I backed away from the door just as headlights swept across my ceiling. Not 1 pair. 3. White beams slid through the edges of my curtains and cut the room into strips of light and shadow. I held my breath. Outside, engines purred low and expensive. No sirens. No shouting. No tires screeching. Just 3 black SUVs stopping in perfect silence along Maple Street, blocking both ends like they had rehearsed it. My phone buzzed again. This time, the message was shorter. "Stay away from the window, Emily." I froze. I had never told the stranger my name. My name sat on that screen like a hand around my throat. Emily. Not Miss. Not you. Emily. I did not move. The phone trembled in my palm, throwing a pale blue glow across my fingers while the apartment around me stayed dark. Outside, the headlights held steady through the curtains, bright enough to turn my tiny kitchen into a box of moving shadows. I wanted to tell myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe Jenna had changed her number. Maybe I had typed my name in the message without realizing it. Maybe the stranger was someone from work, someone who knew me and thought this was some terrible joke. But the street below had gone too quiet for jokes. Maple Street always had noise, even at 2 in the morning. A delivery truck rattling past. A neighbor coughing on a porch. The low bark of Mrs. Henson's old dog from the house across the street. Now there was nothing except rain and engines. Deep engines. Expensive engines. The kind that did not belong on a block where most people parked 10-year-old sedans under trees and prayed the hail stayed away. My phone buzzed again. Do not open the door for anyone except me. I swallowed hard and typed with shaking thumbs. I do not know you. The answer came so fast it felt as if he had been waiting for those exact words. That is why you are still alive. I stared at it, my breath catching on something sharp. Alive. The word was too big for my small kitchen, too heavy for the cracked tile, too impossible for a girl who had only meant to text her best friend because her ex was standing on the sidewalk. I backed away until my hip hit the counter. A glass in the sink tipped slightly and made the smallest sound. I froze as if the whole city might have heard it. Then footsteps moved below my window. Not Ryan's restless pacing. These were measured. Calm. More than one person. I should have stayed away from the window. The stranger had told me to. But fear makes rules feel like suggestions when the answer is 6 feet away on the other side of a curtain. I lowered myself to the floor and crawled to the living room, where the front window faced Maple Street. I lifted the curtain only an inch. 3 black SUVs sat along the curb, rain sliding over their polished hoods like oil. Their windows were so dark they reflected the streetlights instead of showing whoever was inside. One blocked the corner near the stop sign. One sat behind Ryan's blue pickup. The third was directly in front of my building. Men in dark coats stood beside them, not rushing, not shouting, just watching the street with the stillness of people who had already decided what would happen next. Ryan stood under the broken street lamp, his hood pulled over his head, his phone hanging loose at his side. For the first time since I had known him, he looked unsure. Then the back door of the middle SUV opened. A man stepped out into the rain without hurrying. Tall, broad shoulders under a black wool coat. Dark hair brushed back from a face I could not fully see from above, but even from my window I felt the change he brought with him. The other men shifted without being told. Not much. Just enough to make it clear he was the reason they were there. He looked up. Straight at my window. My hand slipped from the curtain, but not before I saw the ink on his left wrist where his sleeve had pulled back. Black lines curled over pale skin, disappearing under the cuff of his coat. A tattoo shaped like a raven holding a key. My phone lit up again. I said stay away from the window. Then came another message, slower somehow, worse because it sounded almost calm. Open your door in 30 seconds, Emily Carter, or the wrong man will reach it first. I had 30 seconds to decide whether the monster outside my door was the one I knew or the one who knew my full name. For the first 10, I did not breathe. For the next 10, I listened. Rain against glass. Engines below. My upstairs neighbor's pipes knocking inside the wall. Then a sound came from the hallway. Not a knock. Not yet. Just the slow pressure of someone stepping onto the landing outside my apartment. My door was old, painted white 3 landlords ago, with a brass peephole scratched around the edges from years of nervous hands. Mine included. I moved toward it like the floor might break under me. The chain trembled when I touched it. The deadbolt felt cold. On the other side, silence waited. My phone buzzed once more. 20 seconds. My throat tightened. I leaned toward the peephole. The hallway light flickered, yellow and weak, but I saw him clearly enough. The man from the SUV stood outside my door with rain darkening the shoulders of his black coat. He was taller than I expected, maybe 6'3", with pale skin, dark hair, and a face that looked carved rather than born. His eyes were not black like the street below had made them seem. They were gray. Cold gray. Storm gray. Eyes that did not wander, did not soften, did not ask permission to. Understand you. His left hand rested at his side, relaxed, but the tattoo at his wrist showed beneath his cuff. The raven. The key. The mark I had seen from the window. Behind him, 2 men stood near the stairwell, facing away from my door, watching the hall like nothing in this building surprised them. The man lifted his gaze to the peephole. Somehow, he knew I was looking. Emily Carter, he said through the door, his voice low enough that I had to lean closer to hear it. Open it. My fingers tightened around the chain. Who are you? I asked, but my voice cracked in the middle. He did not answer right away. That scared me more than a threat would have. Alexander Kane. The name meant nothing to me and everything to the hallway. Even the men near the stairs seemed to stand straighter when he said it. You sent a message to a number you should not have. I looked down at my phone, then back through the peephole. It was a mistake. Mistakes usually do not know my private line. I thought I was texting my friend. Then your friend has dangerous taste in contacts. I should have been terrified, and I was. But there was something else under the fear, something sharp and offended. He stood outside my door like my panic had inconvenienced him, like my life was a puzzle someone had dropped on his expensive shoes. I did not ask you to come here, I said. His eyes held steady through the peephole. No, someone else did. The words moved through me slowly. Someone else. Before I could ask what he meant, the stairwell door opened at the far end of the hall. Ryan stepped inside, soaked from the rain, breathing hard, his face tense with confusion and anger. My whole body went cold. Alexander did not turn around at first. He only lowered his eyes, as if disappointed by bad timing. Then he spoke to me, calm as winter. Now you understand why I told you to open the door. Ryan looked from him to my apartment number and forced a laugh that sounded thin. Emily, who is this? Alexander finally turned. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just enough to let the hallway feel smaller. The man she accidentally texted, he said. And the reason you will not reach her door. Ryan stopped walking. I could see it happen, the moment his confidence cracked. No one touched him. No one raised a voice. Still, the air changed. I slid the chain free with shaking hands, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door 3 inches. Alexander looked down at me for the first time without wood or glass between us. His gaze moved over my face, my bare feet, my trembling fingers wrapped around the edge of the door. Then it stopped at my wrist, where a red mark from earlier circled my skin. Something in his expression went still. Not soft. Not kind. Worse. Controlled. You are coming with me, he said. I lifted my chin, even though my voice barely held. I am not going anywhere with a stranger. His gray eyes returned to mine. Emily, I am the safest stranger on the street. Behind him, Ryan's phone began to ring. Alexander glanced at the screen in Ryan's hand, and for the first time, I saw surprise cut through his calm. The caller name was not a name at all. Just 2 words. Kane delivery. Ryan's phone kept ringing in the hallway, thin and bright and horribly ordinary, like it belonged to a normal morning instead of that dark hour when my street had gone silent under black headlights. No one moved for 3 seconds. Ryan stared at the screen as if the words might change if he looked hard enough. Kane delivery. I did not understand them, but Alexander did. I saw it in the way his jaw tightened, not much, only a fraction, but enough to make the 2 men by the stairwell turn toward him without being told. Answer it, Alexander said. Ryan swallowed. The confidence he had carried up those stairs was draining out of him so fast I could almost see it leaving his face. It is nobody. Alexander looked at him the way a judge might look at a lie that had already confessed. Then answer. Ryan's thumb hovered over the screen. His eyes flicked to me, and for one strange second, I saw something worse than anger there. Fear. Not of Alexander. Of whoever was calling. Emily, Ryan said, trying to make his voice familiar, trying to pull me back into the old pattern where he talked and I explained myself. Go inside. This has nothing to do with you. Alexander stepped slightly in front of my open door, blocking Ryan's view of me. That stopped being true when her name was used to reach me. My name. Used. The word landed harder than it should have. I had thought I was the cause of the chaos. The stupid girl who texted the wrong number, the tired waitress with a cracked phone and a locked door, the person who had made one small mistake and summoned something too large to survive. But Alexander was looking at Ryan like I had not summoned anything. Like someone had sent him. What does that mean? I asked. My voice sounded small in the hallway. Alexander did not look back at me. It means your ex-boyfriend was not outside because he missed you. Ryan's face twisted. You do not know anything about me. I know you were standing beneath her window with a phone connected to a dead route through a shell account in Newark. Alexander's tone stayed flat, almost bored. I know the name on your incoming call is a phrase used by people who want me to move quickly and think slowly. I know you were bait. The hallway felt suddenly too narrow, too warm, too full of things I did not have names for. Ryan backed up half a step. His phone stopped ringing. The silence after it was worse. Then a new message lit his screen. From where I stood, I could not read all of it, only the first line before Ryan turned the phone away. Did Kane take her? My stomach dropped. Her. Me. The air left my lungs in a quiet sound I hated because it sounded like surrender. Alexander saw my face change. This time, when he turned toward me, his expression was different. Still controlled. Still unreadable to anyone else. But I was close enough to see the anger beneath the calm, folded tight and locked away. Emily, he said, and my name in his mouth did not sound like possession. It sounded like an instruction to stay awake. Get your shoes. Get a coat. Bring only your phone and identification. Why? I asked, even though part of me already knew. Outside, one of the SUVs flashed its headlights once, and the rain-bright street below seemed to hold its breath. Alexander lowered his voice. Because whoever arranged this expected me to find you. And if I leave you here, they will come next. I looked past him at Ryan, at the boy I had once trusted because he knew my coffee order and made me laugh in grocery store aisles, now standing in my hallway with a stranger's message glowing in his hand. My fear changed shape then. It stopped being panic and became something colder. Clearer. Ryan, I whispered, what did you do? He opened his mouth, but no answer came. Alexander did not wait for one. He took one careful step back, giving me space instead of taking it, and that somehow frightened me more than force would have. You have 60 seconds, he said. After that, Maple Street is no longer safe for either of us. I moved because his voice did not leave room for panic. It was not loud. It was not cruel. It was worse than both. Certain. I stepped back into my apartment and the darkness seemed different now, no longer protective, just full of corners where my life had been too small for the danger waiting outside it. My shoes were by the couch, cheap white sneakers with one frayed lace. My coat hung on the back of a chair, still smelling faintly like diner grease and rain from the walk home after my shift. I grabbed my wallet from the kitchen counter, then my phone charger because some ridiculous part of me still believed ordinary things mattered. Behind me, Alexander stood in the doorway without entering. He did not cross the threshold. He watched the hallway, not me, giving me privacy in the middle of a nightmare, and that detail unsettled me more than his black cars ever could. Ryan was still there when I came out, pressed near the stairwell like he wanted to disappear through the wall. His phone was clenched in his hand. His eyes avoided mine. I wanted to ask him again what he had done, but the answer was already forming in the silence between us. He had not come to apologize. He had come to deliver me to a situation he did not understand. Maybe he had been promised money. Maybe protection. Maybe just revenge dressed up as opportunity. Whatever the reason, my heart did not break. It went quiet. Alexander glanced at my sneakers, my coat, the wallet in my hand, then nodded once. Stay between me and the wall. I hated how quickly I obeyed. We moved down the stairs with the two men behind us and Ryan left frozen on the landing. No one touched him. No one threatened him. That made it worse somehow, because it meant Alexander did not consider him important enough to spend a breath on. Outside, the rain had softened into a mist that silvered the streetlights. Maple Street looked familiar and foreign at the same time. My neighbor's porch swing. The cracked sidewalk. The crooked mailbox outside number 41. All of it trapped between three black SUVs and men who seemed to know exactly where to stand so no one passing by would see too much. Alexander opened the back door of the middle vehicle himself. Warm leather air spilled out. I hesitated. I am not your prisoner, I said. He looked at me over the top of the door, rain shining in his dark hair. No, then where are you taking me? Somewhere the people using your name cannot reach before sunrise. That is not an answer. His gray eyes held mine. It is the only one I can give you on a sidewalk. I climbed in because fear had narrowed my choices, not because I trusted him. Alexander got in beside me, leaving a careful distance between us. The door closed with a heavy sound, sealing out the rain, Ryan, my apartment, and the last version of my life where a wrong message was still the strangest thing that had happened to me. As the SUV pulled away, I watched Maple Street slide backward through tinted glass. Ryan stood under the broken street lamp, smaller than I remembered. He did not wave. He did not run after us. He only looked down at his phone again, and the glow painted his face the color of guilt. We drove for 20 minutes through wet Chicago streets, past closed laundromats, dark storefronts, and traffic lights blinking red over empty intersections. No one spoke. Alexander took one call through an earpiece, answering only with single words. Confirmed. Reroute. No police scanner chatter. Check Newark again. His left hand rested on his knee, the tattoo at his wrist visible when the cuff shifted. The raven and the key. I tried not to stare, but my eyes kept returning to it as if it knew something about me. Finally, the SUV turned into an underground garage beneath a brick building near the river. The door rolled shut behind us, cutting off the city. Alexander stepped out first, then offered his hand. I ignored it and climbed out on my own. For the first time that night, something almost like respect crossed his face. Upstairs, the safe house was not what I expected. No gold. No velvet. No movie villain mansion. Just concrete floors, tall windows covered by steel shutters, a kitchen too clean to feel lived in, and cameras blinking quietly in the corners. A fortress pretending to be an apartment. Sit, he said, pointing to the couch. I stayed standing. You saved me like I was evidence. He removed his coat slowly and hung it over a chair. Beneath it, his black shirt was rolled at the sleeves, revealing more ink along his forearm. Evidence can be replaced. His voice lowered. You cannot. I wanted to hate the way that sentence made the room feel less cold. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. A new message appeared from the unknown number. Tell Kane the girl is only the beginning. The message made the room feel smaller than the steel shutters over the windows. Tell Kane the girl is only the beginning. I read it once, then again, hoping the words would become less impossible the second time. They did not. Alexander crossed the room without rushing and held out his hand. Not demanding. Waiting. I hated that he waited, because it made refusing feel childish instead of brave. I gave him the phone. His eyes moved over the screen, and whatever he saw behind those words pulled every trace of expression from his face. Who sent this? I asked. Someone who wants me angry. Are you? His thumb hovered near the edge of my phone. Yes. He said it so calmly that I almost missed the danger in it. Then he handed the phone to one of his men, a quiet older man named Victor who had followed us from the garage. Trace the route. Do not respond. Victor nodded and stepped into the kitchen, speaking softly into another device. I stayed standing in the middle of the safe house, wrapped in my damp coat, feeling like a guest in a place built for emergencies. The air smelled like coffee, metal, and rain drying on expensive wool. Alexander turned back to me and noticed my hand before I did. A thin red line crossed my palm where I must have scraped it on the chain lock when I opened the door. It was small, almost nothing, but he looked at it as if it mattered. Sit down, Emily. Stop telling me what to do. Your hand is bleeding. Barely. Still. That one word landed with strange weight. Still. As if small damage counted. As if the quiet wounds were not supposed to be ignored just because they did not make noise. I sat on the edge of the couch because my legs were tired, not because he had one. At least, that was what I told myself. Alexander opened a cabinet and took out a first aid kit. He knelt in front of the coffee table, not in front of me, careful to keep distance while he set out gauze, antiseptic, and tape with the precision of someone who had done this too many times. Give me your hand. Do Mafia bosses usually play nurse at 3 in the morning? Only when someone drips on my floor. I almost laughed. It came out as a breath instead, thin and surprised. He glanced up, and for half a second the coldness in his eyes shifted. Not warmth exactly. Recognition. Like he had remembered I was a person and not just a problem sent to his door. I placed my hand in his. His fingers were cool, steady, and careful. The tattoo on his left forearm was fully visible now, black ink winding over pale skin. A raven with its wings half open, clutching an old-fashioned key in its claws. Beneath it, smaller lines curved toward his wrist like pieces of a map. I stared too long. He noticed. What? That tattoo. His hand paused. What about it? My mouth went dry. I had seen that raven before. Not on a man. Not in a safe house under Chicago. In a photograph tucked inside my mother's blue recipe box, the one I kept on the highest shelf of my closet because looking at it hurt too much. My mother had been younger in the picture, standing beside a black car in a cream-colored coat, smiling at someone outside the frame. On the door behind her, almost hidden by glare, was the same raven. The same key. I pulled my hand back without thinking. The gauze slipped to the floor. Where did you get that symbol? Alexander went completely still. Across the room, Victor stopped talking. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed too loud. Why are you asking me that? Alexander said. His voice had changed, lowered into something sharper. I stood, backing away from the coffee table. Because my mother had a picture with that mark in it. His eyes locked on mine. Your mother's name. Laura Carter. The name left my mouth and changed the room. Alexander rose slowly, the first aid tape still in his hand, his face as controlled as before, but his eyes were no longer cold. They were awake. Emily, he said carefully, Laura Carter did not just know my family. My heart began to pound so hard I felt it in my throat. Then what was she? He looked at the raven on his arm, then back at me, and the silence before his answer felt like a door opening in the dark. She was the woman who saved my father. For a moment, I could not understand the sentence because it placed my mother inside a life I had never been allowed to imagine. Laura Carter, who burned toast every Sunday morning and hummed old country songs while folding laundry. Laura Carter, who kept coupons in a coffee tin and cried during Christmas commercials. My mother did not belong in the same sentence as Alexander Kane's father. She belonged in faded photographs, grocery store memories, and the quiet ache that came every year on the anniversary of the night my parents never came home. No, I whispered. You have the wrong Laura. Alexander did not move. I wish I did. The safe house went so quiet that the rain against the steel shutters sounded like fingernails tapping from another world. Victor stood near the kitchen with my phone in his hand, watching Alexander with the careful expression of a man waiting for permission to speak. Alexander gave a small nod. Victor crossed to a locked drawer beneath the counter, pressed his thumb to a small black panel, and removed a thin folder sealed in clear plastic. He placed it on the coffee table between us like it was something fragile. Or dangerous. My mother's name was written on the tab in black ink. Laura Whitaker Carter. Seeing her maiden name there made my knees weaken. I sat before I fell. Alexander opened the folder, but he did not push it toward me yet. My father trusted very few people, he said. Your mother was one of them. I looked at the papers without touching them. There were copies of old photographs, scanned documents, handwritten notes I did not recognize, and one picture that made my chest tighten. My mother stood beside a black town car, younger than I remembered her, wearing the cream coat from the photo in my recipe box. Beside her was a man with silver at his temples and the same gray eyes as Alexander. His father. On the car door behind them was the raven and the key. She worked for him? I asked. Not the way you think. Alexander sat across from me, elbows resting on his knees, the first aid tape still forgotten in one hand. She was an accountant for a shipping company we owned on paper. She found records that proved someone inside our organization was selling names, routes, safe addresses, things that could destroy families. Families. The word made the room tilt. What happened to her? My voice barely survived the question. Alexander's gaze lowered to the folder. She hid the list before anyone could take it from her. What list? A ledger. Names, dates, payments. Enough to expose the people who betrayed my father. I stared at him, hearing my pulse in my ears. My parents died in a car accident. He looked at me then, and there was no cruelty in his face, only a careful kind of grief. That is what the report said. The room blurred. I gripped the edge of the couch until my fingers hurt. All these years, I had treated their death like weather, something terrible that happened because the world was careless and roads were slick and life was unfair. But Alexander's silence told me it had not been weather. It had been someone choosing a storm and leaving me to grow up inside it. Why did no one tell me? I asked. Because you were 8 years old, he said. Because your mother hid you better than she hid the ledger. Because after that night, my father spent the rest of his life making sure no one connected her daughter to our name. I thought of the recipe box in my closet. The blue paint chipped at the corners. The tiny brass latch I had opened 100 times and never searched deeply because grief had trained me to look away. My mother had kept more than recipes in there. I knew it suddenly, with a certainty that made my skin go cold. There is a music box, I said. Alexander's eyes sharpened. What? My mother had one. White porcelain. Little gold birds on the lid. I keep it in my closet with her things. Victor stepped closer. The ledger could be inside. Alexander looked at him once, and Victor stopped talking. I stood, my fear turning into something steadier, something with a spine. Then we go get it. Alexander rose too. No. You stay here. I almost laughed, but there was no humor in me. My mother died protecting that secret. My name was used to drag you into this. Ryan betrayed me. Someone is texting my phone like I am a package being tracked across the city. You do not get to put me on a couch and call it protection. His jaw tightened. Emily. No, my voice shook, but it did not break. You said evidence can be replaced. I cannot. Then stop treating me like evidence. For the first time since he had stepped onto my street, Alexander Kane had no immediate answer. The silence between us changed. It was no longer his command against my fear. It was my grief standing up inside his world and refusing to lower its eyes. Finally, he reached for his coat. 5 minutes, he said. We go together. You follow my instructions, but you walk in by choice. I picked up my wallet, my phone, and the torn piece of gauze from the table. That is the first intelligent thing you have said all night. Victor stared at me like I had just stepped over an invisible line no one survived crossing. Alexander only looked at me, and something almost human moved behind his gray eyes. Then the safe house phone rang, one harsh sound that cut through the room. Victor answered, listened, and went pale. The apartment, he said. Someone is already there. The words hit Alexander harder than any alarm could have. Someone is already there. He did not ask who. He did not waste breath on surprise. He reached for his coat, and the room moved around him as if every wall had been waiting for his decision. Victor handed me my phone, but Alexander took one step between us. You are not going back inside that apartment. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the controlled line of his shoulders, the raven tattoo disappearing beneath his sleeve, the kind of man who had built his whole life on deciding faster than fear could speak. Yes, I am. Emily. Do not say my name like it is a door you can lock. That stopped him. Only for a second. But I saw it. The smallest fracture in the command. I held my coat tighter around me, though the safe house was warm. My mother left something for me. Not for you. Not for Victor. Not for whatever ghosts are chasing your family. For me. His eyes darkened, but his voice stayed low. If the wrong people are already there, the music box may be gone. Then I need to see that with my own eyes. Victor looked between us, clearly wishing he could disappear into the concrete floor. Alexander exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled. You stay in the vehicle unless I say otherwise. No, his stare sharpened. That was not a request. Neither was mine. The silence that followed felt dangerous, but not because he might hurt me. Because for the first time, he did not know how to move me without breaking something he had already decided to protect. I stepped closer, close enough to smell rain on his coat and coffee on the air between us. You said I walk by choice. That means I decide where my feet go. His jaw tightened. Then, almost too quietly, he said, you follow close. We left through the garage in 2 SUVs instead of 3. The city outside had changed while I was learning my mother had secrets. Chicago before dawn looked washed and hollow, storefront windows dark, traffic lights blinking over empty lanes, the river catching pieces of gray sky. I sat beside Alexander again, but the distance between us felt different now. Not safer. Not softer. Just honest. He was not rescuing a stranger anymore. He was protecting the daughter of a woman his family owed. When we turned onto Maple Street, my stomach folded in on itself. The block was not quiet this time. It was too clean. No Ryan under the lamp. No neighbors peeking through curtains. No police lights. Just a dark sedan parked across from my building, engine off, windows black. Alexander saw it before I did. His hand lifted slightly, and both vehicles slowed without a word. "That car is not ours," Victor said from the front seat. My apartment window was dark. The curtain I had lifted earlier hung crooked, one pale corner showing like a bandage. I reached for the door handle. Alexander caught my wrist, not hard, just enough to stop me. His touch landed exactly where the red mark had been. He noticed and let go at once. "Stay behind me." "Beside you," I said. His eyes met mine. There it was again, that battle between control and respect. Then he nodded once. Beside him. We crossed the wet sidewalk together. Every step sounded too loud. The building door was unlocked, though I always locked it behind me. Upstairs, my apartment door stood open 3 inches. The chain hung broken from one screw, swinging gently in the draft. Nothing inside made a sound. Alexander entered first, one hand raised to signal the others to wait. I followed before he could stop me. My apartment smelled wrong. Rain, cold air, and someone else's expensive cologne. The kitchen drawers were open. Couch cushions on the floor. Books tipped from the shelf. Not destroyed. Searched. Carefully. My closet door stood open. The top shelf was empty. The blue recipe box was gone. So was the porcelain music box with the gold birds. I stood in the middle of the room, and grief rose so fast it almost bent me in half. Then I saw the envelope on my pillow. White. Clean. My name written across it in my mother's handwriting. My mother's handwriting should have comforted me. Instead, it made the room spin. I knew every curve of it, the soft loop in the capital E, the way she pressed too hard at the end of my name, as if even ink had weight when it came to loving someone. Emily. Just Emily. No last name. No warning. No explanation. I reached for the envelope, but Alexander caught my gaze before I touched it. Slowly, he said. I almost snapped at him, but the look in his eyes stopped me. Not control this time. Caution. He was not afraid of paper. He was afraid of what people could hide inside grief. Victor stepped forward with a small scanner, passed it over the envelope, then nodded. Clean. My fingers shook as I picked it up. The paper was old but not fragile, sealed with clear tape that had yellowed at the edges. Someone had placed it there recently, but my mother had prepared it years ago. That thought hurt in a way I had no language for. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph and a note written on folded cream paper. The photograph showed my mother holding the porcelain music box in both hands. Behind her stood a storage unit door with a number painted above it. 37. On the back, she had written 3 words. Not at home. Alexander read them over my shoulder, and I felt his breath stop. She moved it, he said quietly. I unfolded the note. My mother's voice came back through the page, not as sound, but as rhythm. My sweet Emily, if you are reading this, then someone finally came looking for what I hid. I am sorry I could not tell you the truth. I wanted you to have a childhood, not a map of other people's sins. The music box in our home was only a decoy. The real one is where your father and I kept our first apartment furniture, Unit 37, West Side Storage. Trust the man with the raven only if he protects your choice, not just your life. I read the last line again because my eyes filled too quickly the first time. Trust the man with the raven only if he protects your choice, not just your life. Alexander stepped back as if the sentence had touched him harder than my anger ever had. For once, he looked less like a man built from power and more like someone standing in front of a promise he had not earned yet. Your mother was smarter than all of us, Victor murmured. I folded the note with careful hands and placed it inside my coat. Then we go to the storage unit. Alexander looked toward the open door, listening. Something had changed outside. I heard it too. Engines. More than one. Not the deep, Familiar sound of his SUVs. These were lower, rougher, circling the block like weather moving in. Victor moved to the window and lifted the curtain a fraction. His face hardened. For cars. West End and East End. Not ours. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out before Alexander could tell me not to. A new message glowed on the cracked screen. Your mother hid the truth well. You will not. The hallway light flickered once, then went out. Darkness filled the doorway behind us. Alexander moved closer, not in front of me this time, beside me, exactly where I had told him to stand. His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for me. Emily, whatever happens next, you choose. I looked at the note in my coat, then at the street below, where black cars were blocking Maple Street for the second time that night. Only now I understood the difference. The first ones had come because I accidentally reached the wrong man. These had come because my mother had reached across 18 years and chosen me.